Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic, and I have some Battlestar Galactica news. I've done very few Battlestar Galactica stories on my channel, but apparently they're going to be rebooting Battlestar Galactica for a second time. And I'm not sure how I feel about this. So, Battlestar Galactica originally was a franchise that was started back in the late 70s. And it was started by Glenn Larson, was the creator behind it and stuff like that. And it ran, I think, for maybe one season. I think that's all they got is one season, maybe two, I'm not sure. But the reason why the show was canceled is not due to how popular it was, because it was immensely popular, because it looked like, it was almost like a Star Wars TV show that came out every week. And for a TV show at the time, it had really good special effects. That's ultimately what sunk it. The studios knew they had something popular, but it was so expensive to produce. What they did is they canceled the show, and then they tried to reboot it and do a cheaper version. So then they came out with Battlestar Galactica 1980, where they had already made it to Earth, and so you could have all these scenes on Earth, and you didn't have to have it out in space. You could recycle all the footage from the first season. Anyway, it was a complete disaster. Galactica 1980. But the Battlestar Galactica franchise kind of, became a cult classic, and then in 2004 they rebooted. Although they didn't really want to call it a reboot, they called it a reimagining. They took kind of like this concept that never quite blossomed originally, and they kind of made it their own thing. So when I was growing up, I can just barely remember Battlestar Galactica. I remember seeing a few episodes here and there when I was really young, but I never really got to see it, and then it went off the air, and it was just gone. Because that's how it was back in the day when you had a peasant vision or even basic cable. It's not like now. Like now you can almost access anything because of the internet. But back then, once they canceled the show, that was it. The show was gone. And they didn't rerun it. Unlike Star Trek, where that's how I became a huge Star Trek fan, was because for some reason, here in Canada, CBC television reran the original Star Trek for years and years and years. They just reran that show on their station. And that's how I got to see all the original Star Trek episodes. And that's what, got me into Star Trek, was seeing the original series. But that didn't happen with Battlestar Galactica. Once it was canceled, no one was rerunning it. It was gone. So when they rebooted it in 2004, I got hooked right on this show. I absolutely loved it. And this was one of these shows that kind of made a divide among fans. It was, kind of had fans that, if they were a fan of the original Battlestar Galactica, they hated the new version. And people who were fans of just the new version tried to go back and watch the older ones and just thought it was way too cheesy. Now, where I never ever really got to see any of the reruns of Battlestar Galactica, I didn't have an attachment to it like I did with Star Trek. So if they had rebooted Star Trek, maybe it would be different. They recast Kirk and all those guys, that would, maybe I'd have stronger feelings about that. But I didn't. So I didn't mind that they changed Starbuck into a woman, or they changed Boomer into an Asian woman, because I didn't have the same attachment I have to other franchises. And I just absolutely love the show, and I thought they did a fantastic job with the reboot of Battlestar Galactica. But now it looks like they're going to go for a second reboot. So the guy that's behind this one is Sam Esmail. I guess that's how you pronounce his name, I'm not sure. So this article is from IndieWire. Sam Esmail's idea for releasing new Battlestar Galactica is unlike anything else on TV. Now, it's not really that big of a deal when I get into the article and you see what his plans are, and it's probably going to be like everything else on TV. So they're still in the planning stages of the pilot. So they don't have a pilot yet, so there's not really a lot of news. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's there's a few things I want to talk about. So I'll start with the first paragraph here. With NBC streaming service Peacock running smoothly for the last several months, many have wondered about big projects announced back when it was starting out. One of them was an ambitious retread of the popular science fiction series Battlestar Galactica, to be produced by Mr. Robot creator Sam Esmail. So now, I've never watched Mr. Robot, so I have no idea if that show is good or not. So this is another entry into the streaming war. So Right there, that's kind of like a strike against it because, I don't know. I think this whole streaming war thing is going to turn into a real bloodbath. And you get all these shows now that are trying to get their own thing, trying to get shows created to lure people over to their streaming services. And the name Peacock for a streaming service, like who thought up that one? Like I get it, it's the NBC Peacock feathers and all that, but still, it sounds lame. So anyway, there was a recent interview done with Collider with this Esmail guy. In a recent interview with Collider, Esmail gave some insight into how he plans to approach the series. He said he specifically reached out to Ronald D. Moore, the helmer of the 2004 reboot of Battlestar, that became a groundbreaking show in its own right in order to secure his blessing. I spoke to him before I even took on the project to make sure that it's all kosher with him, because the last thing I want to do is step on his toes. And one thing we both agreed on is that it won't be a reboot of what he did, said Esmail. And the other interesting thing about his unique approach to this show, Esmail said they are still in the planning stages for the pilot, but one thing audiences can expect is a release strategy unlike other shows, in that it could be one episode a week or several depending on the mandates of the story. So that's kind of interesting. For me, it was like, let's get in there and tell the right story and let it tell us how many episodes. We may dump 3 episodes in a row because it's a 3-episode long battle sequence that needs to be dropped in a row, even though there are 3 signifying chapters and maybe each chapter is switching a viewpoint within the battle sequence. There may be a 20-minute episode that's the backstory of one of the characters that gets dropped right after that, Esmail said. So what it looks like they're going to do is they're going to let the story dictate the length of the episodes. So you might get 4 episodes one week, or maybe one week, 1 20-minute episode, or one episode that's a half hour or an hour. So that's like their big twist of what they're going to do. So, I mean, this is something that could work or could backfire on them. Who knows? But I kind of like the idea that shows are like releasing 1 episode a week now. Makes it a little bit more digestible. And then it just, last paragraph goes into kind of like a little bit of the history. Battlestar Galactica originated in 1978 and told the story of a fugitive fleet looking for Earth after the destruction of the 12 colonies of mankind. Ronald D. Moore's incarnation, running from 2004 to 2009, extrapolated on that plot, infusing it with a stark allegory on America post 9/11. And yeah, that's one thing that, I don't know, younger people probably can't appreciate now, but unless you were there, like me as a Canadian, I remember hearing about 9/11 on the news and not really knowing what's going on. Like the first thing I heard, a plane had crashed into a building, and I thought, well, maybe it was an accident, and that's all I heard. I didn't even know if it was in the United States or what part of the world it was. Then when I finally got home from work, my dad was watching the news, and then that's when they showed the footage, and it was just like an insane thing to be alive and witness. It was crazy. It would have been like, it was like living through Pearl Harbor or some big event like that. So there was definitely, I mean, and after that, nothing was ever the same after that, after 9/11. So this definitely played into Battlestar Galactica, the reimagining version of the show, because that was in the show, that was their 9/11. You know, the destruction of their colonies by the Cylons, and then, you know, their civilization collapsing. So they even had the wall of pictures, everything on there. So it was very, very easy to tell that this show was heavily influenced by the events of 9/11. And 9/11 even goes on to play in the shows now, like even with The Expanse and the recent new season where Earth gets struck by the asteroids. That is like within that show, that's their 9/11 event kind of deal. A lot of people didn't like the way the series ended. I didn't mind it. I thought it could have been better, but I didn't really mind it compared to how they ended some other shows. So I don't know, what can you do for, and for me, this wasn't really that long ago, I guess maybe it has been, but it doesn't feel like it for me. Like, it doesn't feel like Battlestar Galactica, Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica, was that long ago. So what they're going to do with the new series, I have no idea, but you're just basically retelling the same story again. And that's kind of like the, I guess, one disadvantage Battlestar Galactica has, is it always has to be about the Battlestar Galactica, and it always has to be like the same story. Like, that universe is pretty finite. Like, you can't expand out anywhere else. Unlike Star Trek, where Star Trek, you can just keep going. Like how many different Star Trek shows there are, and how rich the Star Trek universe is. Like with Discovery, even the new show, like now they're way into the future, and you can tell stories with that. And you got Star Trek Voyager and Deep Space Nine, and you can go in the past and the future. All these different directions you can do. There's a lot you can do with it. A lot more flexible franchise than what Battlestar Galactica is. So I'll be curious to see how it goes, and if it's going to be any good. I don't know, but I don't know. I kind of got a weird feeling that this isn't going to be any good. And there was always different stories about what this was going to be. There was actually talks of they were going to do a new Battlestar Galactica reboot, but it was actually going to be a feature film and not another TV show. So be curious to see how this all plays out. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.